In this video, we are going to learn how to do the Missouri Property Tax Credit. In order to be able to do this, we're going to need to create a new return because the taxpayers that we have done all of our other practice returns for make too much money. The Missouri Property Tax Credit is a credit that is available to Missouri residents who are either very low income and disabled or 65 or older. And we are going to help people file for this credit. So let's take a look at this sample problem, and we're going to go in and create a return using this information. It is all posted up under course documents under Blackboard or Moodle, depending on which semester you're watching this. So I'm going to pause this video and create my tax return, and then we'll go in and do the Missouri Property Tax Credit. So I have gone through and I have entered items 1 through 9 on my federal income tax return, and now I'm ready to do the Missouri return. Missouri, for the most part, is pretty easy because it calculates straight off of the federal return. You just have the option to make a few additional changes, and this Missouri Property Tax Credit is one of those additional changes that we're going to make. So from item 10 down, this is all going to relate to Missouri. If you don't know how to generate a state return yet, go into your existing return, go over to Menu, and choose State section. We're going to add State Return and select our state, which is Missouri. And then we have to click the appropriate box here. So a person can only claim the Missouri Property Tax Credit if they were a resident of Missouri for part of the year, because the Missouri Property Tax Credit gives back to Missouri residents a portion of property tax paid on their residences during the year. Now, a person can claim this even if they are a renter, because extremely low-income people are deemed to pay part of the property taxes as part of their rent. And so you just need to make sure you click the correct thing. They were either a full year resident, part year, or a non-resident. If they are a non-resident, you'll click this because you want it to calculate correctly, but you'll stop here because non-residents for the year were not eligible for this credit. But if they were a resident or a part year resident, and our person we're going to assume was a resident for the full year, you're going to click the appropriate box and hit Continue. And then you're going to choose the county in which the person lives. Our taxpayer lives in Greene County and lives in the Springfield School District. There we go. And then we're going to add that to the state return. And it wants to know if we have any dependents or qualifying persons. No, we do not. And then we're going to go back into the state section. And we're going to edit. So we're going to choose Enter Myself. And again, it comes up with the information we just entered, so we'll hit Continue. And then, as I mentioned, Missouri calculates off of the federal return, and so the software thinks it's already calculated everything correctly for you unless you have some adjustments that you need to make. So we're going to click Yes because we want to make some additional adjustments. And we're going to go into the Credits section. And it's the Property Tax Credit Information, MOPTS. Also known as the MOPTC, depending on whether a person is filling it out online or on paper. But it's the exact same thing. So we choose that. To file the property tax credit, we're going to select Yes and complete all of the information below. And we go in and we complete the basic information. So the software wants us to tell us what qualifies the person for the MOPTS, and If you remember earlier in the video, I said the person has to be over age 65 or disabled. They've added a new criteria this year if a person is over 60 and on SSA. So a person can qualify there. Now we have a criteria of veteran here, but the truth is if the person is a veteran, they also have to be disabled or over 65. So we're usually just going to choose one of these three categories here. Our person is over age 65, that's what qualifies her. And then you have to indicate if the person owned or rented their house. So let's go back into our information here. And it looks like she has rented this current residence since March 1st of the tax year. And we have some other information. And then here, prior to living at Barbie Bungalows Way, she owned her own home at 12 Disney Princess Drive. So we've got a person who has a couple different things going on. That means we're going to have to fill out two different versions of this form for her. So first thing we're going to do is the rental one, because that was the first thing that we saw on our list. And we don't have a deceased spouse, so we're not putting that on there. Date of death. Did you occupy and pay the same taxes in 1982? I don't think they mean as in 1982. I think they really mean as in the prior year, but we will select no, because whether it was the prior year or 1982, they didn't occupy and pay that same tax. Okay, then we go into household income. So this form is going to pull over income that we entered on our tax return, but it's going to adjust it by a few other things that are not taxable. So if a person had railroad retirement benefits, veteran benefits, pensions that were not included in federal AGI, public assistance, which is normally not taxable on the federal tax return, and it's not taxable on the Missouri state tax return, but it is part of household income and it has to be entered here. So public assistance, AFDC, which is aid for dependent children, and unemployment that wasn't included in federal AGI. It all has to be included there. And then any non-business losses that were used to arrive at our Missouri AGI, which means any non-business losses that we considered when we were arriving at the federal income as well. And so we do have at least one thing that goes on here. If we look back at the problem, she received $6,000 in SSI benefits. That goes here under public assistance. Then it asks us to enter the property tax information. If a person was a renter, they won't have to fill this out. But if they owned their own home during any part of the year and they're hoping to claim the Missouri property tax credit, they will have to fill that out. So we'll fill that out here in just a second when we go back through and we do the portion of the year that they own their own home. Then we go here to enter form CRP. A CRP is just information pertaining to the addresses that we lived at. So here we're going to enter total rent paid from form Missouri CRP. We're going to select the type of the rental unit. So we typically think of a house being the type of rental unit that we're going to have, but it could be a mobile home. A person could just rent a mobile home lot and have their own mobile home on it, in which case you kind of have to split this up. If they lived in a boarding home, so maybe they just rented a room. If they lived in a nursing care unit or a hotel, other low-income housing, or they share a home, any of these things could apply. Now, I want to highlight this, low-income housing. If a person lives in low-income housing, they may not be eligible for this credit at all because the owners of the low-income housing buildings get specific tax breaks, and so tenants who rent from them may not be deemed to pay property tax as part of their rent because of the tax breaks given to the landlords and because they have subsidized and lower rent. So it's important that you ask your person if they're renting, if it's considered to be low-income housing, and we have to select the right one. For our particular client, she was in an apartment. And we have to list anybody else who lived there with her. As far as we know, she lived alone. But the reason we have to list additional residents is that they may end up prorating part of this. Then we enter the gross rent that we paid. And so this is the total amount that we paid out of pocket, not including any amount received from housing assistance. So usually housing assistance is Section 8. Looking back at our problem here, it looks like she paid $4,500 in rent. And we're going to do this on a per residence basis. So you may have a person who rented at several different places during the year. They moved around. You're going to do one Missouri CRP for each residence. So enter the rent paid to each additional residence in each of the individual MOCRPs. So this one was $4,500. So we're going to enter the beginning rental date, and I think we said that she moved in there on March 1st. Yes. And as far as we know, she's still living there. So she moved in 03/01/2017. Oops. I guess you have to put your slashes in 03/01/2017. Sometimes software will do that for you, but not this one apparently. And she's still there. So when it says enter rental date 2, we're going to put the end of the year, 12/31/2017. Then we have to enter the landlord's information. We have to have all of the landlord's information or else the credit will not calculate for the taxpayer. So we enter the landlord's information. It was Barbie Bungalows. And we have to have the last 4 digits of the landlord's social security number or the FEIN, which is the federal tax identification number essentially. And we have to have one or the other of those two, or else this won't calculate for the taxpayer. We see it is 77987-654. And this is a relatively new requirement. We didn't have to put this in prior to the 2015 tax year. And so we might have some people who haven't claimed this in a few years and they're claiming it now. And if they get irritated and they say, well, we never had to have it before, that may be right. Last year was the first year they had to have this information. What did we say that was? 77-987-654. Okay, and then the landlord's street address we need to have. They were located at 4-Year-Old Way, and the landlord operated out of Carthage, Missouri. And the zip is 64836. Enter the landlord's telephone number. And that was 417-287-1234. And it asks you to enter without the dashes, so that's what we did. Enter to the relationship to the landlord, and if there is none, then you leave it blank. Most people are not related to their landlords, but for example, if a person rents from their mom or their sister, you have to enter that information in there because a person may not be eligible if they are related to their landlord. Now we're going to enter the street address of the rental property. This is where the taxpayer actually lives. And it looks like the taxpayer lived at 100 I Love Smurfs Road in Springfield. And that zip was 65802. Okay. If they had lived at other rental properties, we would go through and put in more of the CRPs, but we don't have any more CRPs. We do know that we owned our property at a different location for part of the year. So now we go on down to number 13 in our list. And it said she owned it at 12 Disney Princess Drive in Springfield, Missouri. She has property tax records indicating that she paid $200 of real estate tax associated with the property, and the property receipt indicated that the home sat on 1.2 acres of land. And we can assume that this was issued by Greene County. In fact, I'm typing it in there so you don't have to assume. All right, so we're going back here. Now we go back under the property tax information, the county issuing the receipt, Greene, number of acres, I believe we said it was 1.2. Enter the percentage of allocation. So if we had more than one person living here, or more than one taxpayer living here more specifically, we would have to allocate it out. Enter the total property taxes paid, and those were $200. We said Greene County issued that receipt. Okay, and so we're done with the property tax information. You'll see down here, it starts with number 2, select the county issuing receipt, and it just repeats the questions over. That's in case a person has a second property that they can claim property tax credit for. So we're going to hit continue. And I think we've entered all of our information. Let's hit continue again. Now when I hit continue, it did not generate the refund for me, and I came back in, and currently the software is telling me that what we entered contains one or more errors. I went in and checked it, and it does not contain errors, but you'll notice that I'm working in the practice lab. Let me adjust my screen recording here. So now you can see I'm working in the practice lab, and in the 2017 year for the 2016 tax year, Practice Lab was not up to snuff as of the time of the recording of this video. So even though you won't actually see it generate the credit, and it won't show us the tax return so that you can see where the credit would show up, I want you to at least go through the steps so that you are familiar with how to enter the information. In future years, I'm hoping that the Practice Lab does a better job of letting us in and letting us enter the credit and see how it calculates. But as of January 21st, 2017, we can't see it. All right, go ahead and try your practice problem and submit it as homework.